Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and please welcome to our panel, Influence of Technology on Environmental Diplomacy. My name is Veronika, and today I'm in the company of wonderful speakers. I would like to briefly introduce my speakers, and according with our diplomatic code, I will start with the ladies first. So please welcome Madam Ambassador Evangelina Lourdes Bernas, who comes from the country with a unique combination of Eastern and Western cultures, they say. Her Excellency was appointed Philippine Ambassador to Austria in December 2022, with concurrent jurisdiction over Croatia, Slovenia, and the Slovak Republic. Madam Ambassador obtained Masters of Science in Foreign Service from Georgetown University, Washington, D.C., and apart from the diplomatic duties, is currently serving as the Philippine Permanent Representative to the United Nations in Vienna. Actually, symbolically, I think even the motto of the Philippines calls to nature, if I'm not mistaken, which sounds like for God, for people, for nature and country. Is it right? Yeah. Then on my left, we have Ms. Aktas, who is currently a policy officer at the European Commission's Directorate General for Climate Action. She holds a prestigious degree in energy engineering from the University of Twente and University of Oxford. And I believe who better than her would feel at ease in the international affairs, being born in the Netherlands, growing up in Germany, and being of a Turkish descent. We are very excited to hear perspectives from the Brussels window today. And last but not least, we have Mr. Lederer, an experienced diplomat currently serving as an attaché, the Austrian Minister of Foreign Affairs. And apart from his dedication to the environmental diplomacy, most of all, of course, I'm pleased to know that Mr. Lederer holds diploma from the Diplomatic Academy of Vienna and was studying at the same program as me, the DLG. Also, Mr. Lederer is holding masters in history and Russian language from University of Graz, so he probably knows Russian even better than me. It seems like we are very lucky today to have the experts from different parts of the world, different experience, different background, fighting on different flanks, so to say, but of the same front, the environmental front, and that is just great. So first of all, it would be very interesting to hear about the perspectives, starting with Madam Ambassador. Your Excellency, if I may, prior to your diplomatic duties to Austria, you were the head of policy of Coral Triangle Initiative and the Worldwide Fund, as well as the chair of the Board of Trustees National Museum of the Philippines. So could you maybe share with us some details or aspects of your rich experience in fostering environmental sustainability, partnerships, and use of technology in adapting some measures during the time, perhaps?
Yes, so WWF is a global international, it's an international organization on nature, and I worked for its first regional program, regional initiative. So I was based in the Philippines, but reporting to our Indonesia office at the time, and we were a team composed of people from the Netherlands, from Switzerland, from Indonesia, from everywhere. So it truly was an international initiative. But what we did was we helped the 6 countries in the Coral Triangle, which is the nursery of the seas. It is the most marine biodiverse part of the world. We helped them, well, not combine, but have the policies in harmony, harmonize their policies on fishing, on marine environment protection, etc., so that the 6 countries can take care of that area of the Coral Triangle together. And we also did this with the assistance of the Australian government, the US government, and other partners. So I did that on an NGO capacity, And then I shifted over to government, to our National Museum. Our National Museum also covers 16 museums all over the Philippines. So not just in the capital, but truly it is a national museum and covers all our regions. And one of them is we do have a Museum of Natural History, not as beautiful as the one here, but it does cover our natural history. So it's a little different from what you will see here. But we did have a lot of scientists, anthropologists, biologists, paleontologists, all different kinds who were under me, and I wanted to make sure that they felt valued and that they contributed to national policy as well. So not just in taking care of our heritage, but in making sure that there will be a beautiful environment left for the country.
Definitely. Thank you very much, Madam Ambassador. Mr. Lederer, I would like to move to you next. Prior to your current position, you worked for the Federal Ministry for Climate Action, Environment, Energy, Mobility, and Innovation and Technology. Could you maybe guide us through the bilateral experience that Austria has made in the area of environmental diplomacy?
With pleasure. It's good to be back here. I was in this very room when I had the entrance examination for the Diplom-Lehrgang. And later on I had here the lectures with Professor Leubel concerning the international conventions in environmental topics. I think this is now covered by Professor Leudel, different. But it didn't prepare me for work. I knew that there were the conventions. I knew that there's Cartagena, Rio, Paris, and so on and so forth. But when I joined the Ministry for Transport, Innovation and Technology, that was the previous name to the long name you mentioned, we started with railways. No speaking about environment or whatsoever, just railways because they're the best mode for transport. So we started with switches, norms, turnouts, sleepers, tracks, and so on. Then we did get a little more competencies, so we also focused on communication. From communication, we came to traffic management, air traffic management. From there, we came to smart city applications, and now we slowly arrive in the environmental sector. With the smart city applications also was very important then for us, environmental technologies like the renewables, like solar, hydro, wind, geothermal, and of course, biomass. And we got a good support from our head office with the research funding programs we are having at hand. So we even developed new technologies to make use of used diapers to make energy and generate energy out of those diapers. So we had a lot of technologies at hand, but then we thought, what to do? Let's go abroad, bring those technologies to other countries. But it's not an easy task if you're just a normal civil servant. And it reminds me of a little story. About 100 years ago, an Austrian inventor saw a technology from another inventor, Mr. Josef Ressel, the modern ship propulsion system. Now this inventor took the idea and modified it and filed an application for the Austrian-Hungarian Patent Office and was rejected. So he worked it over, did a little more, and and was rejected again. This happened to him 7 times, till he finally got 1912 his patent. Anybody got a clue whom I'm addressing? No? Victor Kaplan. He developed the Kaplan turbine. But nobody wanted to use it. The Pelton and the Francis turbine were already proven technology. What for a new turbine? Nobody needs it. So first installation in Austria, 26 kilowatt in Vorarlberg. But that's it, end of story. Until 1916, a delegation from Sweden came to Austria, from Vattenfall, and they wanted the technology for Lilla Edet, a new hydroelectric power plant north of Göteborg, and they built it with the Kaplan turbine. It wasn't proven technology at that time. Fun fact, Lilla Edet is the only power plant worldwide making use of 4 different turbines, different classes. So then the success story of the Kaplan turbine begins. But why am I telling you this story? Because if you work in the environmental technology diplomacy sector, you need an open heart and an open mind for the new technologies at hand. You will have to get those technologies to other countries, to suggest to other governments to make use of those technologies. And you will sit at the table with civil servants who do not have that knowledge. So you have to make sure they know what they're getting for their money, the taxpayers' money actually. And that's why be like the Swedish Vattenfall colleagues, be open to the new technology and don't be like the Austrian patent officers. It won't bring you further, no? So I will finish now, so we have still time for the discussion.
Thank you very much, Mr. Lederer, for the insights. And yeah, I guess we definitely need an open heart and open mind in most of the spheres. So now, Ms. Aktas, I'm moving to you. You, as far as I know, founded the EU Green Deal brief on the social media. And well, we all know that European Green Deal represents an ambitious framework for addressing climate change. So maybe apart from your experience and your perspectives, I'm going to ask you a simple question. How far are we from the main goal of achieving the climate neutrality in the EU by 2050?
So first of all, welcome everyone. It's a pleasure to be here, and thanks for sharing your stories as well. I want to go one step back, actually. And what I love about this panel is that we have this inverted situation. You in diplomacy entering like the environmental tech sphere. For me, as an engineer, thinking that technology is the solution to everything. Going into my master's at Oxford, which was all of a sudden more social and like the socializing aspects, people talking about politics and philosophy and history that I had no idea about. And seeing that kind of interaction playing a role with technology in order to implement and facilitate a transition, hearing about the European Green Deal, which was launched in 2019, which is all about becoming climate neutral by 2050. I'm sure, and I hope that all of you heard of this. But that kind of gave me the kick to come to the European Union. So this is 4 years ago. I work in the climate department, as I mentioned earlier as well, on a very technical niche subject, and love to go once in a while high level to talks like this, where we talk a little bit more about how this all is facilitated and works together. Something that I realized in these entire discussions is that, well, technology is obviously a solution, and here we're talking about 3 different pillars, essentially. The hardware, so renewable energy plants, grids, all like energy efficiency measurement tools, or whatever it can look like. The hard things, the materials part, the things that need space. We have the software part, AI, data. It's like kind of these enablers for making stuff more efficient or processes more efficient. And then the social media part as well, which is all about communication, reaching people, talking about certain topics, and making them more accessible. So this is what I embarked on when I started at the Commission 4 years ago, where I was like, man, I had no idea during my studies, during my bachelor's, about the European Union, nor was I interested at all. And something happened along the way that I decided, that I realized once I came to the EU, to Brussels, and wanted to share that with a wider community of people. So I embarked on this mission, not having any experience in communications or knowing how it works in the first place, and I was like, let's start this experiment, give it a try. And essentially, I summarize EU energy and climate policies. I make like little briefings, 4 things that you should need to know about this policy, and give career tips as well on how to like enter the barrier, like go over this barrier of the application processes, etc. What are the career opportunities and youth opportunities as well? So exactly for people like you. Which then over time grew to a community of almost 30,000 people now, which I find amazing to see this interest in this type of topic because it's very niche, it's very technical as well. But coming to the question of, are we on track with reaching our goal of becoming climate neutral by 2050? I mean, I have a very personal, what I observe in the trends and the things that are happening around is that there are two movements happening at the same time. On the one hand, compared to 2019, we talk about climate neutrality. It's more a common term. It's something that companies and governments are concerned with one way or another. And at the same time, industry is taking this entire role of developing this new type of technologies and this interaction between the industry providing the solutions, being the risk managers essentially, and then the governments providing a direction and putting the safeguards in place accordingly, is something that I found very fascinating. But that movement is happening on the one hand. On the other hand, we see like these news that, we're getting like oil consumption is increasing, and like it seems like these backward trends happening at the same time. But overall, while these two graphs, let me say, are happening, I think the one on the trend of us picking up in all the climate action aspects will be overtaken. So don't get discouraged by all the news that you're seeing all along. As you were saying as well, I mean, it's a path full of setbacks as well. And to bring up another example, I recently listened to a podcast about the Brooklyn Bridge, for example, something that we take for granted, like this huge, super nice bridge. But it took 5 years to get the okay from the people around. All the engineers in the world were saying this bridge is not going to be standing there; it's going to fly away. So everyone was against it, and despite so much hesitance, despite sticking to an idea and going through it and pushing for it, 5 years to get like an okay from the city to go ahead with this construction project. I mean, it's insane. The discussions for the Green Deal started 4 years ago. So I just want to put this into perspective. It's a huge progress that we made already. There's so many opportunities happening. And just as like my final point to my little introduction would be 3 tips in particular on how you can stay up to date in this area of technology developments. One is a newsletter called Clim EU. If you Google that, Climate EU, you'll get through this weekly newsletter providing you an overview of all the startups and innovations happening, all the funds within Europe and VCs, and where the money is flowing essentially. Gives a great deal in getting to know where the direction and where technology is developing as well. It keeps your mind open, it keeps your mind in the solution space. You see what's possible out there. Second is Shaping Europe's Digital Future. It's a weekly newsletter by the Digitalization Department of the European Commission. It's a great overview that you get again weekly of all the initiatives that are going on, what is happening in the AI sphere, etc., that I would really recommend, because there's nothing more important than being up to date with the content and the developments happening on such a fast pace as well. And the last one will be self-promotion, because I think it's a great deal in keeping in touch with the policies in this area, which is EU Green Deal Brief. So this is the Instagram account where I share like all these briefings where you can get up to date very quickly on all the EU policies in this sphere. And with that, I'm very much looking forward to our questions and to our discussion.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Ms. Aktas. So I believe we've heard about the environmental diplomacy in practice just now. And now comes the time for questions. And I will use my priority and pose the first question to all the speakers. We can see a lot of struggles of different types and kinds in our world today. And of course, climate change is definitely one of them. Climate change affects everyone. But there is also an inequality in the world and struggle for resources, which, correct me if I'm wrong, I dare say might come to the fore in the near future. So in this regard, do you see a problem of unhindered and equal access for all countries to the latest emerging environmental technologies? And if yes, doesn't this increase the inequality in the world? And maybe how can we solve this problem? Okay, so please.
Yeah, if I can start. So I am sitting with two specialists, but I am what you would call a generalist. And there are many diplomats like me who represent our country in many jurisdictions, not just one, and all the UN agencies that are here. So it goes from being experts in, transnational crime to nuclear energy policy to peaceful uses of nuclear applications. So I am not the only one like this. A lot of my colleagues cover everything. I am lucky that I have 6 officers, including myself, in our embassy. I have colleagues where there are only 2 of them, and they cover the same, if not more, than I do. So this is the kind of disadvantage that some of us face, but we have to keep going, and we really have to keep on top of all the information that can be overwhelming. But having said that, we also want to make sure that all of the technical cooperation we are able to take advantage of. So for instance, for us in the Philippines, where we are the #1 most vulnerable country in the world to climate change, and #4 in the global risk table, we can really take advantage of all of the things that the EU has been working on, and not just everywhere. There's just so much technology out there. But how do we get them to be not only commercialized, but to be used and implemented in our part of the world? And this is the difficulty. We have to choose which one is right for us. There are many technologies out there for mitigation, for smart cities, etc. But where are we? What are our current needs? We need to look at adaptation measures, because we don't want to be like Vanuatu, where they're going to disappear in a few years, their land. So we want to make sure that there are adaptation measures, technology measures that we can already use now to help us. So for instance, in our case in the Philippines, in the UN Office of Outer Space Affairs, we use technologies from there for real-time disaster risk management. And that is what our Philippine Space Agency is doing with the satellites that we have access to. So it sounds a little strange that a country like the Philippines has a space agency, but this is what we use it for. It's not to discover the moon or rockets. It is practical use for our archipelago, because we are more than 7,300 islands, and having this technology helps us manage in a place where we really are riddled with disasters every year. And in the past 10 years, we've had perhaps 2 of the strongest in history. So it's that kind of situation we face every day. And as diplomats, we have to find solutions for it. I also have other colleagues that talk about some policies that, for instance, in the EU, look like they are environmentally forward, but on our side becomes difficult. So for instance, I have colleagues in ASEAN and in South America who are not so happy about a new EU policy on wood products, where you have to certify that the products coming in are from certified forested areas. But in some places, it's very difficult to get the certification because the way we do our land titling is different from the West. We have areas that are pre-colonial or ancestral domains where the property is owned by the tribe. So it's not owned by an individual. And it's not just us, it's a lot of places in South America. How are you going to certify that if you have to place one name in the certification? That's part of the process. So, there are little bureaucratic things that sometimes stymie our access to this kind of market. But we are, suffice to say, we are trying. And again, there are many technologies that we make use of. So recently in the Philippines, we also just had NASA come over to help us measure our air quality. And again, this is part of those new technologies that we need, because when we have good data, then we are able to formulate our policy and choose the technology that we can afford, that is most immediately needed, that we can prioritize, and then also look forward to what we can leapfrog so that we don't have to go through the process of looking for technology and then in 3 months there's a newest one that's available. So this is what we all try to do now in our part of the world. Yeah.
Do you want to go first?
Miss.
All right. So inequalities. I mean, this is something really prevalent in any type of sector, right? We've always talking about these raw materials, and there is not enough access, and about the human rights aspects of it, etc. And these are very, very, very important considerations, and should be part of all the discussions that are going on in anywhere, honestly. But there is an ideal world and there is a real world, and in order to get to this ideal world, there are some trade-offs to make in the process. So the real world is just like the economic system that we're living in, which is unfortunately like incentivizing these type of practices of looking over the humanitarian aspects of it and looking over like the natural aspects of it. So here regulations and guidance plays an incredibly important role to facilitate that process for like a more happy world all together, but for a more equal and fair world altogether. When it comes to the access of renewable energy technologies, for example, one of the arguments that I hear very often is, hey, but like there's not enough lithium available, and what about like this raw materials, etc. And I always wonder, and this is not to undermine that is a threat or that is a concern, but I always wonder, how come that when we're building all the mega yachts and, like these huge unnecessary buildings, that was never a discussion about the availability of these raw materials. But all of a sudden, when we're talking about renewable energy solutions, this becomes like a huge bottleneck. Also taking another consideration with the oil discussions going on, where they 20, 30, 40 years ago, they were saying like, oh, peak oil has been reached, there's not enough resources, and we're still like going like very, so I'm not trying to undermine this aspect, I'm just trying to put some perspective in there and be able to judge certain arguments or to judge certain data, which is also a very dangerous thing, like very, very easy to manipulate or put some bias. I mean, I work in data collection, or like setting specific rules for the industry and how they're supposed to do their GHG calculations, etc., for the construction and building industry for myself. And it's like small little methodological things make a huge difference in the outcome of the respective solution that then would be, like an easy to lead to rebound effect. Very interesting discussion from my side, like to look into this, but just to put that perspective in play as well. But from a diplomatic perspective, I've come to realize, having been with the EU delegation at the UN 2 years ago, last year in South Korea, how big of a role the EU representation as well as the national member states embassies play a role in creating this connection of facilitating this technological process towards more climate neutral options together, to first of all put that on the agenda of the national governments, but also like to facilitate, like, hey, you're not there with the options yet, look, here's an expertise, there's expertise, and facilitate that process altogether, which I found extremely fascinating, because I was always wondering, like, oh, you know, typical engineering mindset, like, oh, what is the role of diplomats here? And I was like, wow, man, like, this is really, really impressive. There is a, sorry?
Or frustrating.
Yeah, definitely. But I mean, I was really amazed. It's a world that I had no idea of, and I really noticed like what an important role both of you, but also all of you as future diplomats play in this regard. So these would be like my 2 points on this question in particular. I'll try to keep it short.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yep, you nailed it. It's correct. You're tasked as diplomat to find the right technology for the problem at hand. And then you end up with several people telling you, you need this, you need that. In the end, it comes out, you don't need the Rolls-Royce. Volkswagen is also okay. And there we're back to the topic of access to the technologies. You don't need the most advanced, latest technology to solve the problems, especially in the environmental sector. Sometimes it's the well-proven technologies, the older ones that are still reliable, still usable, and can be tasked to solve your problem or to mitigate it at least. Because the problem also with high-end technology is you need high-end personnel to manage it, to keep it working. But normally you don't have it. That was the problem I faced in Indonesia. We had a project of air quality monitoring. And we had the technology here in Austria at hand, and also the software, everything was there. And we brought it to Indonesia. And several years afterwards, the Indonesians came and said, "Oh, it's not working." I said, "Oh, really? What happened?" Well, it was hot in the container, so we drilled some holes. Now it's raining in, and the computer doesn't work anymore. Okay. Next problem, they just clipped the energy because they wanted guards to have TV. Other things, they didn't maintain it. We told them, but they didn't have the staff. They lacked it. So we set up a program to bring the specialized staff to Graz, where they get a special training, and suddenly it worked. They were able to manage and to maintain the technology. So in the projects afterwards, if it was a hydroelectric power plant, solar, geothermal, we always included this portion of training for the staff in the project. And sometimes, in the case of Nepal or Vietnam, we even set up a training facility in the country so the future personnel can be trained on the spot and don't have to travel to Austria anymore. So again, the generalist is okay, but you need some specialists in the diplomatic service to cover those special areas. And then you will find a solution. Thank you.
If I may react very shortly, I really enjoy both examples, honestly. Like these very practical examples in the sense that you see it's also this trial and error process of like, hey, trying to figure out how it works best through communication then, and then providing a solution and doing it better for the next project. And allowing ourselves this piloting phase as well with these type of new technologies and new processes and new, technologies to deal with is super important. So not to see as a failure, but like, okay, we can do it better next time. And this just applies to renewable energy technologies that keep on emerging and getting better anyway. Like we need to allow these technologies also the time to become better and adapt in a real life scenario. So there's already implementing of, it's good to go thing. It's a very important component and shouldn't be underestimated. And the second point, you reminded me of one of the quotes that my professors told us during our studies, and he was saying so we're talking about the decarbonization of Africa. And we had this specific example, and he was very knowledgeable in this area, and he said, Europe is like the ape trying to save the fish from drowning. So the ape is trying to save the fish from drowning, I'm repeating it. But the water is the context of the fish. The ape has a completely different context as well. And those two interacting with each other requires, again, diplomacy, very, very important, where this connecting point and building personal relations point plays a huge role. But honestly, that one quote stuck with me so much, because also obviously on EU level, we deal with it in a very big regard of telling again the global south which direction we need to go and how to do it better and that. So this is a very important nuance if you're going into any type of foreign affairs service in the future, really to watch out for and to think about these nuances on how to do this collaboration in a very proactive and productive manner as well. Oh. I'm getting claps now every sentence.
Thank you very much. My second question is related to the topic, I guess, without which we don't even drink coffee or talk about the weather. And that is, of course, artificial intelligence, which became the main technological trend of last and this year. So it is no secret that there are disputes about its fate and influence on our topic as well. And in this regard, my question would be, is it rather an environmental friend or environmental enemy? What would you say?
Would you like to start again?
I think with everything, it can be both, and it depends on how you use it. So it's like a knife. I can kill someone with a knife, but I can also cut a lovely baguette with it and feed my guests. But it's the same with AI, and I think now we are very, very careful about its application. There's so many ethical issues surrounding the use of AI, and as often happens, private companies just run with it wherever the money takes them. But it is up to government then to rein it in and protect society. But we're behind, of course, in the way that it's used. And now, not related to technology, but you see now where information, you don't know exactly if it's true or not. Even if you see a video of someone saying something, you don't know if it actually happened because it was done by AI. But definitely it can have very useful and impactful gains for environmental policy. There's so many processes that can be automated through AI, shortened so that we get, good results based on accurate information right away. Whether it's, disaster management or how do we look at our next year's production schedule for rice, and how do we then mix that with the most beneficial planting so that the soil doesn't get depleted of nutrients, etc. So there's so many different ways that we can use AI to help. But again, now it is asking businesses, can you use it for the benefit of society rather than to go to the moon because you want the biggest rocket, or so part of it is that it's looking at how it can be applied. And again, unfortunately, governments are playing catch up to the technology and trying to find ways to make sure it isn't used to end civilization.
No? Yeah. I mean, the AI and environmental policy could be an entire panel for itself, I think, honestly. But a couple of thoughts on this regard. I mean, from the EU's perspective, there is the AI Act, which I think is a very smart way of dealing with all these new, upcoming, uncertain technologies or solutions in that sense, because it's a risk assessment. So every new AI interface or tool that would be developed would go through this risk assessment process. And depending on the rate, so whether it's more risk or higher risk, it would be banned or like it would be allowed in Europe. Well, sounds very simple. Obviously, like a lot of administrative procedures are around it, etc. And then another aspect is coming into it, which is competition. So, all right, like European companies are not allowed to do these things, but what about the rest of the world then? So these are like very interesting discussions to have with these all new technological developments, which we have no idea to even imagine what's going to come in front of us in the future. And a discussion of trade-offs, and I guess this is where politics indeed plays a huge role to understand what are the societal needs, what are the industry's needs, where do we want to go, and how can we ensure better lives for everyone. In regards to environmental or like climate solutions in that respect, as I mentioned earlier as well, it's like this efficiency tool. It makes processes more efficient. I always see it this way in a sense, like certain tasks are not worth my brain capacity. I always see it that way. And I would love if at some point certain administrative governmental processes would be just automated in that sense. So this digitalization is coming into it big time. But to round off, guys, I'm going to talk about this newsletter again. It's this guy from Berkeley who launched it a couple of years ago. It's called AI for Everyone. It's a bi-weekly newsletter, just very short, very crispy, and you just scroll through it. The reason why I mention newsletters in general is like I hate reading and I really don't enjoy it. But I want to expose myself to certain content once in a while, and I realized this monthly newsletters, they at least give me a peek into it, so I'm exposed to it, and there's some interaction that otherwise wouldn't be in place. So I cannot recommend all these the power of newsletters in that sense. Not the long ones, the texty ones, but really the short, and you just go over it, and in 2 minutes you literally have an overview of what's happening within the week in Europe or in the sector. Cannot recommend it enough.
The Economist articles where it's already mentioned 2-minute reading.
Yeah.
Yeah, the application of AI in the modern world of technology, especially also in the environmental sector, has already arrived several times all over. So in the modern hydroelectric power plants, you have in the governing system already AI applications, so that power plant is governed in the correct way. High water, low water, high head, low head. So the AI already can do the applications of the shears of the bulb turbine, for instance. Also to prevent any intrusion from outside. The AI system is securing also the power plant. But then we slowly get into the area where the AI starts thinking what it's doing, and maybe it gets the wrong impression from the data it receives, and then suddenly the power plant doesn't work anymore as you would like it to work. That's a problem that's being addressed at the moment, but it's not fully solved yet, because AI is ever developing and evolving. And there we're back at the government level. Government will always be several steps behind, because government sees a new technology, starts analyzing it, then all the processes start.
Yeah.
Law-making processes, decision-making processes, and at the moment you have the law in place, the technology is far away already, so you're not at the height of time anymore. There could be a solution if you streamline some processes, again with AI support, but then you're again in a situation which you don't want to have.
Yeah.
So it's a tricky business, the AI business, but it can help. I saw a very nice example in Indonesia, because you mentioned deforestation regulation. Indonesia had also the same problem with the regulation, and they came up with a solution. They programmed an app where you can take a picture of the actual cut in the wood. Now, it's classified. This is that wood, this is this wood, and this is located all over in that area. And they're using now AI to get already the information from the cut, and then the AI knows, yeah, I've seen it there, and they interconnect it. So it's a step closer to get deforestation regulation in clear waters in Asia. But there you can use it, it's perfect. But in other cases, I don't know, because as Asimov once said, you need the 3 rules for androids. I think we need the 3 rules for AI. But the 3 rules from Asimov doesn't work with AI, because AI is learning.
Yeah.
So we don't know what AI will get the conclusion. Human being is destroying the environment, so maybe, yeah, I don't want to go there. But you get the picture. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Yeah, I guess the friendship wins for now, but there are still some obstacles that we need to work on. Now I would like to open the floor to the audience. I'm afraid we only have time just for a few questions, but before you ask the question, please address the speaker who you would like to pose a question to.
Thank you. Is it working? Yeah? I can also... Okay. Thank you very much for your contributions. If I may, I would like to ask 2 questions. Well, first, my name is Laura Mendoza. I'm a student here in my 2nd year in the Master of International Studies. And the first question I would like to address to all of you. And I think that something that is very important when we talk about the environment is rethinking our relationship to resources and how we use resources, and maybe limiting our exploitation of resources. So I think that the concept of moving towards a circular economy is very, very important. So my question would be, how you think the developments are going to... I know that many countries like the Netherlands are at the forefront of arriving to a circular economy. So I wanted to ask you how your view was on the developments and how new technologies could accelerate this development towards the goal of a circular economy. And the second question I would like to address to you, Your Excellency, and I would like to ask about, yes, environmental treaties and conventions, because I also did the course on environmental law. And when it comes to environmental law and these treaties, there's always the 2 groups, right? The global north and the global south, or the West, however you might want to call it, and it's very important to address the nuances and how the 2 groups interact with each other when it comes to the environment, especially because states in the global south are very vulnerable when it comes to climate change. So I wanted to ask, how can, within the negotiations of these environmental treaties, how can states from the global south kind of negotiate, or how can they act in a way to gain leverage to reach the goals for themselves and for their countries? Thank you very much.
Yeah. Could I pick up the point on circular economy? I love that you're mentioning it. It's in fact like one of the really big discussions that we're having with colleagues from all the other departments as well. I mean, looking in my area specifically, constructions and buildings, where we come together with the industry department, environmental department, energy department, climate department, etc. Sufficiency. So do we really need more buildings? So I'm really giving the example of a concrete on a concrete sector. Do we really need more buildings do we need, like how much more cement do we, for example, need, which is one of the heavy industries in the future? So where does it make sense also to, like which eggs should we put our basket in that regard? And analyze it from that perspective, and how can we put through our regulations incentives into recycling? Because one thing that we also need to keep in mind is, if for me as a company it's cheaper to just dump it somewhere in the landfill than to recycle, I'm gonna dump it. Like I would do it as well, even, you know, like it's what it is. Like we cannot expect companies to act out of goodwill, and we need to put the respective incentives into place. And I can really tell you there is like a huge efforts going on into including this in the respective environmental but also industry policies.
Okay, well, I mean, they sound like simple questions, but really it's it's like you're talking about years of negotiation. But maybe let me just give you an example. So as Michael said earlier, sometimes it's not the newest technology that is applicable. So within, for instance, in the circular economy, we also want to look at our traditional customs, where, you know, we use everything in a particular product. So for instance, coconuts. In the Philippines, in our part of the world, not just the Philippines, we use everything of the coconut. So we don't throw away anything. And we use it for food, for building materials, for, what do you call that? You know, to prevent landslides, etc. All of that we use from the coconut. Jewelry, everything, even our clothing we can use from the coconut. So it's a matter of also looking at what technologies we have and to use them again. And that's been happening, I think, more and more, not just in our part of the world. I think even here in Europe it's the same. So we also look more and more at using bamboo, for instance, so more sustainable, renewable products in our development. On the part of environmental conventions, there's a lot going on there. But a lot of times we also just have to keep pointing out, at least from our side, how much of the, so for instance for us, so we're number one, you know, climate vulnerable country in the world, but we only produce 0.07% of emissions. So how is that fair to us if we have all of these things that we now have to comply with? So part of that is asking for or making sure that measures that we need in order to survive are within the discussions, within the dialogue, and within the conventions. But if I just veer away for a bit on climate negotiations and look at other things like illicit wildlife trade, that is also a big industry. Our mid-sized country of 110 million people, we lose about $1 billion a year, so a little less in euro, 900 something euro a year. But and then we are only able to recover $1 million in the same period. The customers of this illicit wildlife trade are from the West, mostly. Well, okay, and China. So there's a lot to be said about making sure that those who consume the products also must take responsibility for it. On our side, going back to environment or pollution, the Philippines is also in the top 3 plastic polluters. But we have been doing our part in changing our laws to make sure that we can punish those who are responsible. Here, what part of the work I like here as the permanent representative to the IAEA is that we have technologies that we can use on plastics recycling in the ocean. So we are among the countries in this initiative called New Tech Plastics. And we will be recovering a lot of that plastic pollution in the ocean, because that's what we do. We pollute our oceans with plastic and upcycle it and take it out of the environment. But the other thing that we also get from here is technology to pinpoint the source of pollutants. So not just plastic, but oil, for instance. So with all of this, radiographic nuclear technology, that's not the term, okay? But with all of this technology on spectrometer and all of that, we can tell who produced it. And then at some point, we can tell them, okay, you pay for it then. So a lot of this, we want to use this kind of technology so that on our part, we can demand from those who are responsible.
I'll make it short. Funny thing about circular economy, it's not new. If you look into history, our grandparents did it every day. So if my grandfather's shirt was torn, it was cut up and it was a cleaning cloth for the next time period. If that one is not usable anymore, it was used for the blanket for the dog. So again and again, it was reused and recycled. What happened? We forgot about it. And now we expect other countries also to forget it, and then we can teach them again, even though we don't know it exactly anymore. Circular economy is good, and we need it. But like I brought the example with the used diapers to generate energy, you know what the major problem was? We're lacking the diapers. We don't have enough children to generate enough energy out of those used diapers. So this technology would only work in other areas of the world, like Asia, where using diapers is not that common. So again, we have the technology, but we cannot really make use of it. It's only a small example, but circular economy also has to focus on what is possible, not just because we can do it, yeah, it's fine, nice. But we also have to focus where to use it, how to use it, and where the other countries also can make use of it with the things at hand they have. It's not just bringing our technology somewhere else that won't work, and we know it from the past. So circular economy, Austria is one of the forerunners in Europe, and we're doing a lot in research in circular economy, and it's the economy of the future. We need it. But also, we need the right awareness and mindset, and there we should also tackle the schooling system and the educational system to get the awareness already in the upcoming generations, and not later. It's difficult. I'm also older and have difficulties to learn things, no? So it's better to do it with the children.
Thank you very much. Maybe we should give a round of applause for, and it seems like we are at the finish line, and I believe our discussion allows us to come to the conclusion that our agenda of environmental diplomacy is definitely not unarmed. Like you all said, we have technology, we have tools at our disposal that help us. We have technologies that help us to collect and provide data on environmental conditions, that help us in communicating between each other, that help us and warn us about the environmental emergencies, that help us to mitigate climate change. We have technologies that shares information to the indifferent public, and most importantly empowers and unites people to engage in environmental diplomacy. So if we have technologies that serve us, we have the technical ability to promote this agenda. I guess the most important thing that every person on this planet would really want to implement this agenda. The main thing for there to be a sincere desire to move together towards the noble goal of protecting the environment. And with this encouraging note, I believe we come to an end of our discussion. Thank you very much for our speakers once again. Thank you for the audience. And yeah, have a good day, everyone.
Thank you.